Hey neighbor, welcome back to Beyond ARTV. My name is John, and it's time for another episode of the Dear John Q&A show. This is a series where I'll take a detailed music-related question from a viewer that you guys leave in the comments, starting with Dear John so that I can find it, and then I answer in video form if I feel that it needs more context or explanation. Today I'm tackling a question from my viewer Ashton. They asked me about losing band members. When does it start to feel like a different band? When should they hang it up? Should they keep running with this, or should they just call it a day? I know that it's a debacle among music fans of when they should have broken up or when they should have changed their names, so we're going to dive into all of that and more. I hope that you enjoyed the discussion. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments section and drop a like while you're here. When a band loses members, when does it start to feel like a different band? If they get a new singer, guitarist, keyboardist, or drummer, should the band change their name? Right out of the gate, I know this is going to sound like a cop-out answer, but what band are we talking about? Because that's actually a really important part of the question. Is it somebody where they have an interchangeable basis where you're not going to be able to tell? You could tell me that, oh, this guy played on every album, or you could tell me it was a different person each album, and I'm like, okay, I don't see the difference. Am I supposed to spot the differences here? Or it could be an iconic drummer, an iconic lead singer that really feels irreplaceable. Like imagine The Offspring without Dexter Holland on vocals, or Albert Hammond Jr. not being in the Strokes, or Mike Dirnt not slapping the bass for Green Day. It just doesn't make sense. So the question of when does it start to feel different? When you start to lose those key members that were vital to the writing process, that were so important to the band's core sound. If they leave, then you're losing that distinct personality, and it can really feel differently, like when Block Party lost Matt Tong, or when 3 Days Grace lost Adam Gontier on vocals. You kind of have to play it on a case-by-case basis, and you always want to give the band a shot to actually replace the member and it work out in their favor, because so many groups have done that. I think of Trivium, for example. I think a lot of fans were kind of hesitant because they've gone through so many drummers, and then Alex Bent comes in and literally breathes life back into Trivium. So there's definitely the positive sides of it, but then there's also the times where it comes in, it's like, okay, the Cinderella slipper, it's not fitting you here. There's so many groups out there where you could write on a piece of paper, slip it over to me, put a name down and say, this person is leaving the band, they're never coming back, but that band is still going to be successful and you'll still like them. Now in that moment, I can't probably picture that, and I'm probably just wailing on the inside at the thought of somebody like Chris Walla departing Death Cab for Cutie, but even with him being such a vital member, they survived, and I would argue that the material they've been putting out since he left is still really rock solid. Everything starts to shift in a major way not only when those key members leave, but when band members slowly depart the group over the course of many years. It just feels like you're losing an uphill battle. Slowly your bassist quit, or maybe the guitarist is out, or maybe they're no longer touring, and it just feels like a broken, fractured group at that point. Can you carry on? It feels weird, but also there's a lot of bands out there where it's literally the only member left is the lead singer. I think of Panic at the Disco being a prime example. Brendan Urie has been the only official member of that band for quite some time. Everybody really left in like the late 2000s, and while they did go at it as a duo for a little while, that didn't stick. There's other groups like Everclear, and even I think Puddle of Mudd, their only remaining member is Wes Scantlin, so do with that what you will. The general public tends to associate the lead singer as being the voice, the face, and the main talent of the band, which I think is a misdirection and a confusion that the general public has, because it's not all the lead singer, it's the entire band. And a lot of groups, it's not widely known that the singer doesn't always write the lyrics. Look at Rush. Do you think that Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson were writing all the lyrics? No, that was actually Neil Peart. Rest in peace. Of course, there's other groups like that too, and I think it's very relevant to the conversation here. Losing band members, does it feel differently? Well, let's look at the UK-based metalcore band Architects. Tragically, a couple of years back, their brother Tom Cyril, the founding guitarist and their primary lyricist, passed away. It wasn't Sam Carter writing the lyrics, it wasn't even brother Dan Cyril in the band. It was after Tom passed away, but he had some big shoes to fill after that passing. Now, after he lost his battle with cancer, they bounced back with Holy Hell, and the quality in the lyrics was on par with their past releases, which is insane to even fathom, but they really harvested that heartbreak and turned it into something gold. Not gold as in happy, but gold as in therapeutic. That's an example of a time that it really did work out when changing a big band member like that. And I would say that another example would be Alice in Chains. They've carried on with William Duvall doing co-lead vocals alongside Jerry Cantrell. And yes, of course, it would not be the same at all if Jerry and the other guys weren't there. I don't know that they would have come back like that. We don't want a Sublime with Rome situation because God knows that's been a train wreck. But in the case of Alice in Chains, I would argue that they had every right to carry on to make music, and they took more than enough time away after Lane Staley's tragic passing. And I think that other bands like Linkin Park, people are very curious if they're going to continue on without Chester Bennington. And I would say that they have every right to, of course. It's not just Chester in the band, even though he was such a huge part. They're not trying to replace him, but if they do bring in somebody else, or even if they just carry on with the guys that they do have, I think that that's totally okay, and it could totally still feel like Linkin Park. When should the band call it a day and just hang it up and say that, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this anymore, maybe we should change our name? Well, I would argue that once it no longer actually feels like the band anymore, like The Vines, for example, or 3 Days Grace, where they're just going through the motions. Once we've given them a chance, and once they've tried to prove themselves, if it doesn't work out, then maybe just break up and do a solo thing or call it a different name entirely. I mean, even Panic at the Disco, I think Brendan should just be solo at this point. If somebody irreplaceable leaves, then it's probably time to pull the plug. Look at what Joy Division did after the tragic passing of founding member and vocalist Ian Curtis. They knew that they couldn't do anything else with that vehicle, so they switched over to New Order, and that band left its own legacy because they saw that they weren't just going to milk this dry as Joy Division. They moved on. 3 Days Grace does not feel like 3 Days Grace without Adam Gontier. Flyleaf does not feel like Flyleaf without Lacey Stern. Just like Queen doesn't feel like Queen with Queen plus Adam Lambert, it's not Freddie Mercury, nor is Sublime just Sublime. It's Sublime with Rome Ramirez, who I'm actually not a fan of at all. I just feel that they sometimes try to change the narrative and it undermines their legacy, and if a key member like that leaves, I think, in my personal opinion, you should probably call it a day, especially if there's not others that can step up to actually fill the void. I'll pass the question off to you guys. What do you think about the changing of band members? Think of a band like Paramore, where they've been through that revolving door lineup, but they actually came out the other side, so maybe it was all worth the turmoil and drama in the long run because Zach Farrow came back to the band on drums, and you've still got Hayley Williams and obviously Taylor York. But for every situation that kinda has that silver lining, there's also the dozens of other groups where it just gets so muddy and it's like, oh god, I really don't want to cringe as you creep closer to retirement and you're really just pushing it at this point. Any and all thoughts are welcomed in the comment section down below. And again, if you would like to be a part of this show in the future, then leave a comment down below relating to music detailed questions starting with Dear John, and then I'll reply in video form if I feel that I have an answer for you. Other than that, you can catch up on the entire playlist of Dear John by tapping here, another recent video over here, socials in the description, and I'll see you soon for more on Beyond ARTV.